My son-in-law told me to hand over my house deed or pack my bags within 30 days. He said it so calmly, standing in my kitchen, holding a glass of my sweet tea, like he was telling me the weather forecast. My daughter stood 2 feet behind him and said nothing. That silence cost her more than she knows. I had been folding laundry on the dining table when they walked in together that Sunday afternoon. I remember thinking they looked coordinated, like they had rehearsed this. My son-in-law, I will call him by what he was, my daughter's husband, set his glass down and pulled out a chair. Not to sit, just to have something to grip. He said, "Beverly, we need to talk about the house." I kept folding, a habit I learned from my mother. Keep your hands busy when your heart is about to be tested. He said my daughter had taken on significant debt. The number he gave was $240,000. He said it the way people say numbers when they want the number to do the work for them. Flat, loud, final. He said the only reasonable solution was for me to sign the house over to them so they could leverage it against the debt, refinance, start fresh. He used the phrase, "start fresh," 3 times in under 2 minutes. People who repeat phrases like that are usually trying to convince themselves as much as you. My daughter finally spoke. She said, "Mom, it's just a house. Just a house. The house where I brought her home from the hospital 34 years ago. The house where her father built her a bookshelf that still stood in what used to be her room. The house I had paid off, slowly, carefully, over 22 years of substitute teaching and tutoring after school and summers. Just a house." I placed the last folded towel on the pile and looked at them both. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I simply asked how long they had been planning this conversation. My son-in-law said, "This isn't an attack, Beverly. We're family." I have learned that people say, "We're family," the moment before they do something they know a stranger would never get away with. I told them I needed time to think. He said time was something they did not have a lot of. My daughter looked at the floor. I noticed she was wearing new shoes, expensive ones, the kind that do not come from careful budgeting. After they left, I sat in the kitchen for a long while. The refrigerator hummed. The oak tree outside the window moved in the wind, the way it always had, slow and unbothered. I thought about my husband, gone 6 years now. I thought about what he used to say whenever something felt urgent and wrong at the same time. He would say, "Slow down, Bev. Fast decisions are someone else's decisions." I picked up the phone and called my friend Clara, who had known me since we were both young mothers pushing strollers around the same park. I did not tell her everything. I just said something had come up and I needed to meet with a lawyer soon. Clara did not ask questions. She said she would find me a name by morning. That was the kind of friend she was. I want to explain how we got here, because too many people will hear, "Daughter demanded the house," and assume something was broken from the beginning. It was not. My daughter and I were close for most of her life. She was bright and warm and stubborn in the way that I always thought would serve her well. It did for a long time. The trouble started when she met him. I will not say he was a bad man from the first moment. I will say he was a man who was very comfortable with other people's resources. He had a way of talking about money that made spending feel like strategy and debt feel like investment. He wore confidence the way some men wear cologne, too much of it in an enclosed space. When they got engaged, I offered to help with the wedding. I said I had some savings set aside and I would contribute what I comfortably could. He countered with a number that was 4 times what I had offered. He called it doing it right. My daughter laughed nervously when he said it and looked at me with an expression I recognized as apology wearing the mask of excitement. I held my ground. I gave what I had offered. The rest, apparently, went on credit. The wedding was beautiful. I will say that honestly. My daughter was radiant. I danced until my feet ached and I told myself the number on a credit card statement was their business, not mine. But the number grew. I understood this in pieces through small things. The leased car that arrived 6 months after the wedding. The vacation to Italy that my daughter posted on Facebook, while I knew from a separate conversation she was behind on her student loan payments. The home renovation they started on their rental apartment, which struck me as an odd investment for a space they did not own. I said this gently once. and my son-in-law told me I did not understand how modern finances worked. I was 63 years old. I had kept a household budget since I was 26. I understood finances. I said nothing further. That was, looking back, perhaps my first mistake. Not the last time I would pay for someone else's dignity. By the time of that Sunday conversation in my kitchen, the debt my son-in-law referred to was real. I do not doubt that. What I doubted was how it had been constructed. He said $240,000, as if it were an accident, a mishap, something that had simply happened to them. Credit card balances stretched across 4 accounts, a personal loan taken at a predatory rate, a business venture of his that had quietly collapsed 8 months earlier. He mentioned this last, almost in passing, the way you mention a small footnote at the bottom of a page that changes the meaning of everything above it. What I understood that Sunday afternoon, sitting alone in my kitchen, was that the debt was not new information to them. It had been building for years, and at some point they had looked around for the largest available asset within reach and landed on me. My house, 3 bedrooms, the oak tree in the front yard, paid off. In my name alone. I am not a suspicious woman by nature, but I am a woman who was married for 31 years to a man who read fine print the way other men read sports scores. Some things you absorb through proximity. When my daughter's husband described what he called a deed transfer for tax purposes, I heard my late husband's voice very clearly saying, "Read every word before your pen touches paper." Clara came through the next morning. She set me a name, an estate attorney, a woman, someone Clara's own sister had used during a difficult divorce. I called and made an appointment for Thursday. I told no one. That week was one of the quieter weeks of my life, which is strange to say because underneath the quiet there was a current moving fast. My son-in-law texted twice asking if I had thought it over. I replied both times with variations of, "Still thinking." My daughter called once. She asked if I was upset with her. I said no, which was not entirely true, but the fuller truth was too layered to hand over a phone line. I cooked. I walked in the mornings. I went through the filing cabinet in my bedroom, the one my husband had organized with a system only he fully understood, but that I had learned over years. What I found in the back of the second drawer was something I had not looked at in almost 4 years. A manila envelope, sealed with a strip of tape, with my husband's handwriting on the front. It said simply, "For Beverly, if it ever comes to this." I sat on the edge of the bed with that envelope in my hands for a long time before I opened it. Inside was a letter, 4 pages, handwritten. And behind the letter, a set of documents that my husband had prepared with our attorney. A revocable living trust, drawn up 18 months before he died, quietly, without drama, without telling me more than the broad outline, because he said he did not want me to worry. He said he just wanted things to be in order. The trust specified that the house and the small investment account attached to it were held in trust for my benefit during my lifetime. Neither could be transferred, signed over, leveraged, or used as collateral by any third party, including family members, without my explicit written consent provided free from duress, witnessed by a notary public and reviewed by an independent attorney of my choosing. There was more, a clause my husband had apparently added at the last minute because the attorney had noted it with an asterisk in the margin. It stated that if any beneficiary or heir attempted to coerce, pressure, or deceive me into transferring assets, and if such attempt was documented through written communication, recorded conversation, or witness testimony, those individuals would be removed from the secondary inheritance provisions entirely. The estate would instead pass to 3 organizations my husband had believed in, a local literacy program, a veterans support fund, and a women's shelter 2 towns over that we had donated to quietly for years. I read the letter he had written me 3 times before I fully absorbed what he had done. He wrote, "Bev, I know you. You will try to keep the peace. You will try to give everyone what they need, even when it costs you everything you have. I love that about you, and I also know it is the thing that someone with bad intentions will use against you. So I fixed it before you needed to fix it yourself. You do not have to fight. You just have to survive long enough for the paperwork to do it for you. 31 years and he still knew me better than I knew myself. I drove to the attorney's office on Thursday with that envelope on the passenger seat. The attorney, a steady woman in her 50s with reading glasses she kept taking on and off, reviewed everything without visible surprise. When she finished, she folded her hands and said the trust was airtight. She said the documented text from my son-in-law would be more than sufficient to demonstrate coercion if it ever reached a proceeding. She said I did not need to confront them. I did not need to explain. She would send a formal notice to their address, copied to my son-in-law's email, which I had, outlining the trust structure and what it meant for their request. She said, "You don't have to be in the room for this." I asked her when the letter would go out. She said, "How does Monday sound?" I said, "Monday sounded like exactly the right amount of time. I spent that weekend normally, deliberately normally. I went to the farmer's market Saturday morning. I called Clara and we had lunch at the diner on Elm where we always sat by the window. I planted 3 new rose bushes along the side of the house, the climbing kind, because I had been meaning to do it since April. My son-in-law sent another text Saturday evening. It said, "Beverly, we really do need an answer this week. This isn't personal." I read it and set the phone down and went back to watering the roses. Sunday, my daughter called again. This time her voice had a different texture, tighter, like something had already shifted in her household that she had not told me about yet. She asked if I had made a decision. I said I was still working through some things with my attorney. There was a pause long enough that I counted it. 5 seconds. Then she said, "You got an attorney?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Mom, why would you do that? This is family." There it was again, family. I told her I loved her and that I would be in touch soon. I hung up gently. Monday afternoon, the letters went out. By Monday evening, my phone started. My son-in-law called twice. I did not answer. He left 1 voicemail. His voice was controlled in the way that costs a person significant effort to maintain. He said there must be some misunderstanding. He said the trust documents sounded like something I had been manipulated into by an opportunistic attorney. He said, and this was the part that told me everything, "Beverly, if you had just talked to us first, we could have handled this privately, without documentation, without witnesses, without a woman in reading glasses who had reviewed every page." I saved the voicemail. My attorney had already advised me to keep everything. My daughter called that evening late. I answered. Her voice was smaller than it had been in years, smaller than I had heard since she was a teenager, and had done something she was ashamed of. She did not apologize, not exactly. What she said was, "I didn't think it would go this far." I asked her what she thought would happen when they asked a 67-year-old woman to sign over her only home. She said she thought I would do it because I always found a way to help her. That sentence is the one that stayed with me. Not as a wound, but as information. She had watched me bend so many times that bending had become, in her mind, the definition of who I was. She had confused my love for limitlessness. I told her the house was not going anywhere. I told her my attorney had explained the trust provisions fully. I told her I was not angry at her, which was still only partially true, but growing more true by the hour. She asked what they were supposed to do now. I said, "The same thing everyone who has accumulated debt has to do, sweetheart. You work through it, together, like adults." She cried some. I let her. I did not fill the silence with reassurance, because sometimes a person needs to sit in the consequence of their choices without someone rushing in to cushion the landing. Before we hung up, I said one more thing. I said, "Your father knew this might happen someday. He didn't build that trust because he thought badly of you. He built it because he loved me, and because loving me meant protecting me even from moments he wouldn't be here for." She was quiet for a while. Then she said, "I forgot how much he thought ahead." I said, "I know." So did I. For a while. The weeks after that call settled into something I did not expect. Relief. Not the dramatic kind that arrives with fanfare, but the slow, spreading kind, like warmth coming back into a cold room. I went to sleep without waiting for a notification. I ate breakfast without calculating how a conversation later in the day might go. The house was the same house it had always been. The oak tree, the hallway that squeaked on the third board from the left, the kitchen window where the morning light came in at an angle that I had never once taken for granted and had also, somehow, stopped seeing. I started seeing it again. The trust provisions were explained formally to my son-in-law's attorney. He had hired one briefly, apparently, before concluding there was nothing to contest. The secondary inheritance provisions, the ones that had named him and my daughter jointly before the coercion clause was triggered, were now redirected entirely. He would receive nothing from this estate. My daughter's share would come to her directly, and only upon my passing, under conditions that did not involve him having any claim to it. My daughter did not speak to me for 6 weeks. I understood that. She was sorting through something that had more layers than just a house. Her choices, her marriage, the version of her mother she had built in her mind, and how it compared to the woman who had quietly sat across from a lawyer with her dead husband's documents and said, yes, this is what needs to happen. When she did call, it was a Thursday evening in October. She asked if she could come for dinner that weekend. Not we, she. Just her. I said yes, of course. She arrived without him. She brought a pie from a bakery I liked, which meant she had thought about it in advance. We did not discuss the house. We did not discuss the debt, or the letters, or the voicemail. We sat at my kitchen table and ate dinner and talked about the small, ordinary things that collect between two people who have known each other for 34 years. She told me she was working with a financial counselor. She told me things at home had been hard. She did not elaborate, and I did not press. Before she left, she stood in the front doorway and looked at the oak tree in the yard, the way a person looks at something they almost didn't get to see again. She said, "It looks different in October." I said, "It always has. We just don't always notice." She hugged me at the door, longer than she usually did. I held on. Some things break and repair and break again, and that is the nature of raising a child who becomes a person entirely separate from you. Some breaks take longer. I have decided not to measure the distance between us in months or silences. I measure it in October dinners and pies from bakeries she remembered I liked. My husband used to say that the best kind of planning is the kind that lets you be generous without being afraid. He meant it about money. He meant it about all of it. I still walk in the mornings. I still have lunch with Clara by the window at the diner on Elm. The rose bushes along the side of the house are climbing now, the way I hoped they would, slow and certain, reaching for something they cannot quite name, but moving toward it anyway. The house is mine. It will be mine until I decide otherwise, under my own terms, in my own time. I did not fight for it loudly. I did not stage a confrontation or call a lawyer in anger or deliver a speech about what I had sacrificed. I simply remembered that my husband had loved me carefully and specifically, and I honored that by not giving away what he had worked alongside me to protect. If you are a woman who has been told to be reasonable, to be flexible, to understand that family needs you to bend one more time, I want you to hear something clearly. Bending is not the same as loving. Giving is not the same as being loved. And a house that took 22 years to pay off is not just a house. It is the record of a life built on purpose. I am Beverly. And this is what it looks like when a woman remembers who she is before it's too late. If my story reached something in you, if it reminded you of someone you love or of your own quiet moments of holding on, then it has done exactly what it needed to. Here at Lunar Tales, we believe in the stories that women carry and rarely speak aloud. If you think those stories deserve to be heard, please subscribe. And if you are sitting somewhere right now carrying something you have not said yet, know this: it is not too late. It is never too late. When a woman finally speaks her truth, the room changes. I have thought a lot about what happened, not with bitterness, not anymore, but with the kind of clear-eyed honesty that only comes after enough time has passed to see the whole shape of a thing. What my son-in-law did was not complicated. He looked around for the path of least resistance and decided I was it. A woman in her 60s living alone who had spent a lifetime saying yes to keep the peace. He mistook that history for weakness. That mistake was his, and it was expensive. But here's what I keep coming back to. He could only attempt what he attempted because the conditions had been built slowly over years by choices that nobody had been forced to make. The debt did not appear overnight. The entitlement did not arrive with the marriage certificate. These things grew in the space that opens up when a person is never asked to reckon with the consequences of what they want. That is not a judgment. It is just what I have observed in my own life and in the lives of women I know. When accountability is delayed long enough, it stops feeling like a possibility. And then one day it arrives all at once, and it feels like injustice to the person receiving it. My daughter was not a bad person. She was a person who had learned, somewhere along the way, that I would absorb whatever spilled over. That is on both of us. I taught her that, without meaning to, through years of smoothing things over and swallowing my own needs, so she would not have to feel discomfort. Love does not require that. I know that now in a way I did not fully know it when she was young and I was tired and it was easier to give than to hold firm. What saved me was not luck. It was a man who had loved me carefully enough to see past the version of me I presented to the world. The accommodating version, the one who folded laundry quietly while being told to hand over her home, and into the version underneath, the one who had built something over 22 years and deserved to keep it. My husband built that trust for her. The quiet, stubborn woman he had known for 31 years. He trusted her to survive this. I just had to find the envelope. There is something I want to say to anyone who is sitting somewhere right now being told that giving more is the same as loving more. It is not. Integrity means knowing the difference between what you choose to give and what someone has decided to take. Wisdom is not about being suspicious of everyone. It is about being honest about what you see, even when it is uncomfortable, even when what you see is wearing the face of someone you raised. And resilience is not dramatic. It is quiet. It looks like a woman not answering a text on the Saturday evening. It looks like planting roses when someone expects you to be unraveling. My daughter came back. Not all the way, not yet, but enough for October dinners and a pie from the bakery I liked. That matters. What also matters is that she came back to a mother who had not given herself away. There was still something here to come back to. The house is mine. The oak tree is still in the front yard, and I am still, after everything, entirely myself.